The collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s was not just the breakup of a state, it was the failure of an ideology and its end, both internationally and universally. The conflict known as the Cold War, which broke out after the Second World War between the Western Bloc, under the leadership of America, and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union, was not simply an international conflict between two camps, but also an ideological struggle between two ideologies, capitalism and socialism. The arena of this conflict was not confined to Europe alone, rather it extended to the whole world, ending with the collapse of the Soviet Union and its fragmentation into many states. The Marxist-socialist ideology failed as a system and a way of life for these states and their people, and Marxism-socialism ceased to exist internationally as well as universally.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
It was natural for America and the Western Bloc as a whole to consider this collapse of the Soviet Union and the downfall of socialism as a victory for the capitalist ideology as a system and a way of life. It was also natural for the followers of capitalism to exaggerate in portraying this victory, even to the extent that the Japanese philosopher Fukuyama called it the end of history. Ideologies do not end by the downfall of the states which embraced them, even if this downfall led to the breakup and fragmentation of the states. Rather they terminate when their nations and peoples renounce them and embrace other ideologies and start moulding their lives on their basis. This is what happened with Marxism-socialism. All the nations and people which the Eastern camp was composed of abandoned it and turned to capitalism and started to build their lives upon its basis. However, Islam, as an ideology, remained existent universally after the destruction of its state, the Uthmani Khilafah, in 1924, because the Islamic Ummah, with all her different peoples, continued to embrace this ideology, despite the fact that it was removed from their practical lives and from the international sphere. The ideology remains present in the world as long as there is an Ummah who embraces it, even though this Ummah does not implement its systems for reasons beyond its will. However, it ceases to exist internationally if there is no state to convey it, or to direct international policies upon its basis. Accordingly, the Islamic ideology has existed in the world from the time that the Islamic Ummah in Medina was formed on its basis, after the hijrah of the Messenger, peace be upon him, to Medina, where the first Islamic state was built. It continued to exist internationally since that date, until the demise of the Uthmani Khilafah in the first quarter of this century. Regarding socialism, it began in the world towards the end of the 19th century, when it gained a public opinion amongst the people of Europe. It existed internationally in 1917, when a state was established in Russia and its neighboring countries, which was later known as the Soviet Union. Socialism continued to exist internationally until 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed and its people abandoned socialism, and consequently Marxism-socialism ended internationally and in the world. With the downfall of socialism, capitalism prevailed alone on the international arena, because there was no longer any state in the world carrying any other ideology able to build international policies upon its basis. In terms of universality, two ideologies remained: Islam and capitalism. With capitalism dominating internationally, a new world order emerged. Therefore, it was natural for the American presidency to announce the birth of a new world order.
George Bush has talked time and time again about a new world order, and this is the best chance to begin to establish the new world order.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
America started to spread capitalism from the moment she went out to the world as a colonial state, because colonialism, both in its old or new form, is the method for spreading this ideology. However, what has emerged recently is that since the domination internationally of its ideology, America has begun to campaign to make it prevail in the whole world. And in the same way that it succeeded with the help of the other capitalist states in making capitalism the foundation of the international relationships and traditions, it now wants it to be the way of life for all the nations and peoples of the globe. Based upon this plan, the people are not only to implement capitalism as systems and laws, but also to embrace its creed in all the domains of life and not simply be satisfied by merely implementing it. As for the United Nations, which since the 1940s had served only as a forum of speech with no real power, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, now changed to become a vast international organization with international authority, and it became an international tool to reinforce the hegemony of America on one side and consolidate the capitalist traditions on the other.